Hello and welcome to my channel. Vice Rhino not here. Well, howdy there, internet people, it's not Bo again. It's me! And on your screen is a map of Costa Rica, which is titled 333 Costa Rica because it is drawn with a 333 kilometer radius, because I thought that would be funny. This was a mistake. If I had started this using a 400 kilometer radius instead of a 333 kilometer radius, those circles you see 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4 of the way out would be at 1, 2, and 300 kilometers, which would make things a whole lot easier. And I would be able to get larger areas onto single maps, which would also have made things a lot easier. There are some maps where there's just a city on one side and another city on the other side and nothing in between. Well, there's a little bit of coast on one side and a city on the other side. Just to create a link from one coast via two cities to the other coast, somewhere like Russia where there's bugger all to see, or the east end of Saudi Arabia, there isn't even a map. It's called Aruba al-Khali, the empty quarter, for a very good reason. Same applies to Tibet. Well, the Tibetan plateau is this whole area with no big lakes, no coastline, no cities, nothing shown on the map. What is shown on the map is Costa Rica. You have the west coast and the east coast, or southwest and northeast coasts, and a whole lot of cities. See Miramar down there, that's where they filmed Top Gun. Probably isn't. And Liberia, which I thought was a country in Africa, but never mind. And apparently two different places called Fortuna. Oh, and Buenos Aires, which is the capital of Argentina, but is also a city in Costa Rica. And Mercedes, or Mercedes, if you're Catalan, or some pronunciation, Z or Che? Oh, fuck it. Anyway, not a car, actually a town. And if you would care to use Google or Bing or Yahoo or an actual paper atlas that you found somewhere to look up the distances between, well, there isn't a town in the centre, but look up the distances between San Vito down here, just below the 120, and Fila del Dia. Nice. Beloved of God, or Son of God, or some such name. Up here, just above the 300. And measure that distance on this map, and compare it to the distance on this map, the diameter on this map, the distance from the very end of the 120 ray to the very end of the 300 ray, and the inner of those two bold outer circles. And compare the real life distance to the 666 kilometre distance that represents, and I believe you'll find it's fairly accurate. And the same applies in any other direction and across point to point, across coast to coast, as long as you're going pretty much through the centre. If you measure around the outside, we have Diriono and Coapa in Nicaragua, up there at 322 and 337 degrees from centre. You may find that distance is very slightly distorted, but it'll be pretty close to accurate. I believe on this size this will be pretty close to accurate. Next map, I'm just going to twiddle the zoom just a little to make sure it updates on the screen, is Denmark. It's not actually all of Denmark, because just to be awkward, that island on the right hand side is also part of Denmark, and I found out later. So the right place to put this map for the set was in the middle of Denmark, where you get all of Denmark, all of the main part of Denmark, very nicely centered of the map and pretty much shown with all dimensions pretty much correct. Maybe slightly off, not well. If you notice a couple of towns out in the sea to the north there, Hirtshals, whatever it's called, Hanstholm appears to have fallen into the sea up there around 333 degrees. There's that number again. So maybe it's not, perfectly accurate, but it's not wildly inaccurate. Actually, it is wildly inaccurate in some places. There are hilarious glitches that show up if you put the map in just the wrong place. But in this case, it gives you a pretty good idea. From what have we got? Way down here at the bottom. Saltau, which is in Germany, just to the right of the 180 and just to the left of the 360 up here, we have Arbibro in Denmark. Measure the distance between those two dots on the map, measure the distance between those two actual towns in real life, and again compare the ratio of the distance between those two dots on the map to the diameter of the map to the ratio of the distance between them in real life to 666 kilometers, and see whether this thing is accurate. Compare the shape of the coast, as you can see, is a polygonal approximation, but compare the shape of the coast of Denmark as shown here to the real shape of the coast of Denmark and see whether that's whether it pretty much matches. What do we have near that? If you drop the centre right on a town, the grey pattern that is the overlay with all the bearings and the distances actually obliterates the town name and town dot, so you can't tell what it is. But we have Esbjerg down here at approximately 242 degrees. And up here, way over in Sweden, we have Hagper. There's another distance you can compare. Another map. Some of you may recognise this one. It's the whole of Ireland. Centred just very slightly west of Galway. This is another thing that I've noticed while creating these, is that if you click on the bottom of the tiny circle on Google Maps to get the coordinates, it might well be right in the dot on this. Sometimes. But sometimes it'll be well off to one side or the other. And obviously this is showing each city as a single dot. It's not showing the size. Even if you go to a 50 kilometre radius somewhere like Leeds, you'll get a dot for Leeds and a dot for Headingley and a dot for Bramhope and a dot for Pudsey and a dot for Bradford, rather than one big ugly grey splodge of concrete, which is what Leeds and Bradford really are. And is that Kilrunan? Way out in the sea to the west. And there's an island to the west of Ireland here, which has been coloured in blue, which is another error which this map software sometimes generates, but never mind. Yet another problem. Here is a map showing all of Lithuania. Whole of Lithuania. And at least most of Estonia and Latvia, at least most of Latvia and significant parts of Estonia at the top. And you have Kaliningrad, which is a kind of separated piece of Russia. Down here around the 245 degrees, you can see there is actually a city of Kaliningrad, but there's also the whole Kaliningrad district there. I've got photographs of a Russian patrol boat, or is it? No, Russian watchtower on this spit of land here on the border between Kaliningrad and Lithuania, which is not shown on this map. Neither is the border between Latvia and Lithuania, or Latvia and Estonia, or between any of them and Russia in the east, or between Belarus and Russia, which probably upset some people. But you do have this set of cities, and you still can say, from this city, from the southmost point of this lake, from the northeastmost point of this lake. Who's next? Nicaragua, just north of Costa Rica, which is the one we started with. That's why it has this same lake with the island, the goldfish biscuit-shaped island in it. Notice we have the same places. We have the same Santa Cruz, the same Liberia, the same Fortuna, the Cruz, and so on. Miramar. They're all those places in Costa Rica are on this as well. Fortuna and Fortuna, indeed. Oh, Fortuna. And some of these places were in the south in Nicaragua were on the Costa Rica map. And you can see the Nicaragua border with whichever one is next is marked, which is very nice, as the Nicaragua-Costa Rica border, except at its very westmost end where it kind of disappears. And that northern border, it does have this distinct sort of pair of right angles in the middle. From the west, you've got kind of a swoop up, then a right angle, then a 45-degree bend, right angle, long piece with a couple of wiggles, right angle, and a swoop to carry on east, and then a swoop up to the coast. But you could use those right angles to line things up, or, again, use towns. San Juan del Norte down here. I think its dot is on the coast on the Nicaraguan side. Just before 150 degrees, so call it 149. Plus 180 is 329, which would put it just left of the 330 line up here, and there isn't another town there to use. Bugger. Alright, whatever this is at the coast, just above 40, call it 39, add 180 is 219, which would put you down here. Bugger. Alright. Hundas, down here in the south, up to Mulukuku, just north of centre. Measure that one. It's probably going to be about 330 kilometres, 325, something like that. Obviously measure it off the picture and measure it properly, don't just take my word for it, something like 325. Who's next? Ah yeah, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is quite small, so you know, it fits even at that zoom. You could get it within slightly more than 1/4 of 333. You could get it within a 100 kilometre radius map. And you would get more detail on that, or you'd be able to see more clearly at least. But these are all done to the same size. They're all C2, they're all viewed at 50% and screenshotted at 50% for consistency. Next, Rwanda, which is in Africa, for those who didn't know. The reason you have these triple lines left of centre, these are lakes, and the border runs through the lake. There's an island in the lake, and the border runs through the lake east of the island there. West of centre, in the bottom left, we have quite a long lake with a fork in it, and a border running down the middle again, and a branching on the east side. Rwanda is the country in the centre, very slightly below right, and right of the centre, some distance above, and extending well to the west of centre. It's just where it made sense to have a map centred for what I was doing, just happened to put it in southeastern Rwanda. What's next? Next is South Korea, and again there is a rather significant border missing. You know, the one between Seoul and Pyongyang. Oh, well, it's all Korea. And this map, this South Korea map, notice right in the bottom right, it has little pieces of the coasts of a few other islands, which are part of Japan. So you can not only get the distances from this arbitrary location in Korea to Yeongdong, Kumcheon, Kumi, Seonsan, Seogju, Yecheon, Yeongju, Taebaek, and so on, all over Korea, you can also get the distance to those spots in Japan. And that Hirado at Hirado. Konnichiwa, Hirado-san. 148, therefore 328, which would be Haeju, way up here. At the top left. Way up. It's not going to actually click the cursor, but you could measure between those two and get a distance between points in two countries, across water. What else? Suriname, or Suriname, or Suriname, depending whether you're, I guess, French, Spanish, or South American. It is in South America. It's on the north coast of South America. That's, I think, Guyana to the west of it and French Guiana to the east. could be Venezuela to the west. It's been several minutes since I looked. And of course, for the benefit of any Americans in the audience, we have Arkansas, home state of Bill Clinton, where the age of consent only applies to people who are not married. Take a while to process that one if you need to. Arkansas fits within this map. If you put the centre in just the right place, you can get the whole state in, with quite a bit of leeway of where you put the centre. And I haven't exactly hit a town again, but we have England, Arkansas. Just below the centre and very slightly to the right, you have Viola way up in the north. You could get that distance. You could get Crockett. Is that? Down in the south of Arkansas up to Viola. You could get Houston, in this case not Houston, Texas, Houston, whatever's north of Arkansas, down to, I don't know, Columbia, whatever's south of Arkansas. Or Licking. That's a good name. Just northeast of Houston, right up at the top, there is Licking. That's a good one for Columbia or Clark's, way down to the south. For a straight line through the centre. And again, that distance should be correct. For Americans not sharing a home state with Bill Clinton, we have Georgia. Yeah, you thought you got off lightly not sharing a home state with a frequent flyer in the Lolita Express. You're sharing a home state, or at least a state, with the crazy Jewish space lady, laser lady. It's quite a mouthful. But again, you know, you can draw. It's a map. You can draw straight lines on it. We have Georgetown at 115, and at 295 we have actually nothing, but Huntsville is pretty close to it, and that goes close enough to centre for the distance to probably be correct. Also in the USA, Illinois, and here's where it gets slightly awkward for anyone who's just eagerly printing these out and sticking them down and hoping to put them together. You see, you can get your Illinois map, your fairly accurate, or at least not wildly inaccurate, Illinois map, right here. Print it out. It's cool. And you can see it has Chicago up in the top right on the shore of that big lake. And it has Michigan City and New Buffalo and Pell Lake, and because it was screenshotted at 50%, it's hard to read the place names, but Albany at the top, all in different states. And down at the bottom you've got Clay, Slaughters, Harrison, Madisonville, Livermore in yet another state. That's fine. You know, you get the distances from some point somewhere near Sherman and Springfield and Mount Pulaski and Blue Mound, somewhere in that area, to each of those cities. That's fine. But the very next map in this show is Indiana, which is the next state to the east. You can see you've got Chicago on the shore of that lake. We have New Buffalo and Michigan City and Gary. You have all of those places in Illinois. Canton, Flemington, Elmwood, Peoria, Eureka, El Paso. They're all on both maps. Actually, there's Sherman at 274 and in the outer quarter. Springfield. Heliopolis is just into the third quarter. Mount Zion. There's Blue Mound in the third quarter. Yeah, the same places as were around the centre of the other map are about 3/4 of the way out to the left on this map. Which means, once you've printed out both maps, you should be able to stick them together. You should be able to pin Blue Mound to Blue Mound, and Sherman to Sherman, and Melliot to Melliot, and Michigan City to Michigan City, and stick both these maps together. Same applies to Maine. We have a Maine map. Maine fits in. And you can line up the coastline. All these interesting features of coastline, which don't exactly correspond to the real coastline because they are simplified polygons, but they are the same points on every map that's been generated using this same website. You can line them up if they appear on two adjacent maps. And you have the lakes again. This one over here by Plattsburgh. That lake is bound to be on other maps. And you can make sure that when you put this map and another map together, you line up the lake on this map with the lake on that other map. North Dakota. You can see down here at 118 degrees and way up opposite it at 303, not quite opposite but close, at 303 degrees, just got the corners of the state in. And the southwest corner is in by not much more. The northeast was easy because the eastern border is at that angle. If I'd gone for a 400 kilometre radius, this would have been far easier, and I could have done a single map for South Dakota as well, instead of having to do two maps for South Dakota because it didn't quite fit. But hey, North Dakota is one that did. And of course, on a North Dakota map, you get places up in Canada. For those who didn't know, Canada is immediately north of North Dakota, and north of Vermont, and north of Washington State. And we have Ohio. And I'm not quite sure which lake is which here, but you obviously have one of the Great Lakes up there, which gives you more features, and again, Canadian border. And Pennsylvania, which is right next to Ohio. So again, you have places like Newcastle and Greenville and Beaver Falls and Elwood City on the Pennsylvanian side of that state border, and places like Rock Creek, Orwell, Cortland, Warren, Youngtown, Poland, Salem, Lisbon. Wait, Poland, Lisbon, East Liverpool. Has anybody told them that those are supposed to be in Europe? Oh well. You have those places in Ohio appearing on both maps, so again you can pin them together. You also have this state border near East Liverpool. You can pin the state border as a location. Where two state borders form a junction is a distinct point. You can pin that defined point to the same defined point on the other map. And where the border reaches the coast, you can treat as a defined point. And we have Washington State. Northwest, again. It's Canada to the north. Canada is a very big place. And these are still 333 kilometre radius, C2, 50% screenshot. Don't have to do it this way. You could go C0 and 100%. It would just be a very big file. And all distances from the centre on all of these things should be correct. Should be. Not necessarily are, but they should be. They certainly should be consistent because they're all drawn from the same file. The same huge database of places. And finally Wisconsin. Which, oh yeah, is the one immediately north of Illinois. So when you have your Illinois and your Indiana maps stuck together, you get to put Wisconsin with them. And all of these places along the Wisconsin-Illinois border will be on both maps and will allow you to line them up correctly. And then that's northern Michigan in the top right, and you have the mitten part of Michigan on the right-hand side, and obviously there are maps for them as well. And you get to add those, then you will have the whole of that lake. And with everything pinned together, you'll be able to combine them exactly into one big map. I suggest, if you're going to try this, that you print it out on the kind of paper that gets slightly stretchy or squishy or, soft and pliable and allows you to change its size very slightly. And you use glue, which will make it soggy and allow you to change its size. and maybe print out 2 copies of each and try to stick one set together on a flat surface by all means, but for the other set, put them on whatever shape of surface makes them work, you know, whatever lets you line up all the distances, keep the distances from the centre correct on all the maps without changing them, and just kind of tweak it by pinching like 130 and 140 together a little, or whatever it is you have to do that way to keep the distances which are from centre, which are shown on these maps, the same scale, and line up all the cities. Think you may not want a flat surface for that, but go ahead and try. There will of course be links to the full set as a 7-zip file and to the website that produces these. Just for comparison's sake, this was a 100 kilometre radius, C0 print scale, print size, viewed at 100%, centred on the campus of the University of Warwick, Coventry. As you can see, Coventry just to the northeast and Warwick nowhere in sight. This is actually just a 25 kilometre circle. If you want that level of detail, you can have that level of detail. But you'd be printing out an awful lot of map on an awful lot of paper and producing an awfully large world map. It's up to you. Anyway, it's just a thought. You all have a nice day.